happiness is not found in another location. So what I mean by that is as soon as you feel bad, you just want to run away and go somewhere else and think that it'll get better, and like it solves the problem for a little while, but then you're back to the same problem.
Chào các bạn đã trở lại với TU Podcast mùa 2. Mình là Mạnh. TU Podcast là nơi mình truyền cảm hứng cho các bạn trẻ và xém trẻ về một cuộc sống sáng tạo, một lối sống dám làm những điều mới, những điều khiến bạn cảm thấy hào hứng, nhưng cũng là những điều khiến bạn cảm thấy sợ hãi nhất. Sau những tập podcast mà mình sẽ phỏng vấn những người anh chị, những người bạn thiện lành, mình mong các bạn có thể tìm thấy chính mình trong những câu chuyện của họ và bắt đầu xây dựng cho mình một cuộc sống mà bạn hằng mơ ước. TU, cuộc sống không hối tiếc.
Okay, hello. Welcome everyone to another episode of TU Podcast. Today, everything will be a little bit different as I'm doing a podcast episode in English with a very, very special guest speaker. I've listened to her podcast for a while and got very inspired by her stories and the guest stories on the podcast. So I wanted to invite her here to share more about her journey of coming to another country, to another side of the world, to find herself and become like a new version, a better version of her. Let's welcome our guest today, Dana, who is the host of Creators in Saigon podcast. I won't talk anymore. I'll let you self-introduce yourself, your name, what you're doing for work now, and a little bit about your personal project podcast.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me, Ray. And it's nice to be on here. So yeah, my name is Dana Drehos. I'm 28 years old and I'm from New Jersey in America, which is close to New York. And I was living in New York City before I came to Vietnam in July 2018. So I've been here for about 2.5 years. Yeah. And right now, I guess there's a few things I do to make money and support myself and a few things I do that are just my passion and don't bring me any money, but I still love to do it anyway. So to kind of separate the two, I am teaching English part-time, and I taught English full-time when I first came to Vietnam because I didn't know what I was doing and kind of just came here to try it out, try something new. And after a year of that, I very quickly realized I hated teaching English. And then I started doing freelance podcast producing after I started my podcast, and I started learning about what does it take to produce a podcast, which I'm sure you know, Ray, it's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. So basically people in the US who have podcasts would hire me to do the editing and the show notes and marketing, social media, things like that. So I still do a little bit of that on the side for some extra money. And so that's from like a money perspective. And then in the mornings, I'm studying for a holistic health coach and nutritionist certification. So I can get into later how I have gone this whole journey from teaching to podcasting to life coaching to health coaching. It's been like up and down roller coaster. But I basically want to help people improve their health through diet and lifestyle. And I've been doing monthly educational talks in Saigon about those topics and more specifically about women's health. So that's been really fun. And finally, creator and co-host of the podcast Creators in Saigon, which has been live since September 2019. And we just love to interview inspiring creative people in Saigon. So that's everything.
I cannot remember everything that you're doing now. That sounds like a roller coaster of like everything, transitions, like everything. So I want to get back to the root of all of that changes.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So first, you were born and grow in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And tell us about the story of after you graduate from university and moved to New York for work. What did you do then at that time?
Yeah. So I was never really one of those people who just always knew what they wanted to do when they grew up. I had literally zero idea. And I majored in communications because it was just super general, and people said, oh, you can do whatever you want with that degree. So then I went into advertising in New York City, and it was just a very like work hard, play hard kind of culture. And I was staying up.
Is it an agency or is it a
client? It was an agency. So working super, super late, coming in super, super early, and just like alcohol and drugs and party. And at the beginning, it was kind of fun because it's like, okay, this is kind of just like college with young people and partying, except you're working a lot, but you're also making money, which was new to me. So it was fun for a little while. But then when I started thinking about my future and sort of looking at the people who were above me, like my boss and managers and people like that, I noticed that they also were working really, really late, even though the promise that you get told when you're younger is you're going to work hard now, but later you will make more money and have more free time. But it seemed like that was a lie, because that was not what I was seeing. And I was seeing these people just like giving their life to their work when they had, a partner and kids at home. And they were also still partying and like drinking and doing drugs. And I'm like, I don't know, this is kind of weird. So at that point, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, but I always knew that I wanted to live abroad. I've just always had a curiosity about different cultures and just understanding life through the eyes of a different perspective. And I had studied abroad in Australia when I was in university, and I had visited, other countries before, but never lived somewhere for a long time. So I just decided, like, yeah, we're going to teach English. That seems to be the, easiest way to get abroad and live somewhere and make some money too. And Vietnam was never somewhere on my list of places to go, but I kind of, when I was doing research about what are the best places to live and teach English, Vietnam just kept coming to the top of the list, and hearing great things about the culture, the people, the landscape, and honestly, something in my heart, like that I can't even explain. It just I felt like called to Vietnam in some way for no reason that I know. So that's how I ended up here.
I'm glad that Vietnam has something sparkling for you to be called to here. And I hope the experience that you have in Vietnam has been meaningful and beautiful to you.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the transition when you decided to go teach English somewhere else in the world. Why all of a sudden? Did you have to struggle internally with your thoughts, and do you talk with your boss or your family about it? And how did you decide this is my decision of moving abroad?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was a few years in the making, because honestly, I
it's just not like one day wake up and I have to go. Yeah,
like I didn't even want to go to university. Like when I was 18, I'm like asking my parents if I can take a year off to just travel, and of course they were like, no. So I went to university because I was supposed to, and And then even when I was working, I was always wanting to, I was just dreaming about traveling. And my parents knew that. And I kept asking them, like, can I, like, I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to go. And they're like, no, you can't. And finally, after a while, once I had paid off my student loans and I didn't really need money from my parents anymore, I kind of was like, well, you guys can say no, but you don't really have any control over me anymore. Like, it's my own money. I don't need your help, so I'm gonna go. and I think my mom was understanding. She was like, okay, I know that you have been wanting to do this for a long time, and because she saw me kind of handle New York City. Like, New York City is a crazy city to live and work. And I think she was like, okay, if you can handle New York City, I think you can handle anywhere. So she had that trust in me. My dad, on the other hand, I think still sees me as a little girl, and he's like, oh my God, it's so dangerous, and like, I'm not going to be able to help you, and blah, blah, blah. So that was definitely a difficult conversation to have. And for work, I think I told them like a month in advance that I was leaving, and my manager at the time was really sad to see me go, but she grew up in Brazil. And so she was someone who was living in America. You know, she left her hometown and she came to America. So she kind of understood why I wanted to leave. And she gave me some advice about moving to a new country. So that was nice.
You had a very nice boss who understand your struggles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad that your mom and part of your dad is also kind of understand why you're leaving and trying to pursue your dream.
Yeah.
And I think from your story, we, as a Vietnamese person, I can also share with that a lot, because like we are grown in a very like decided route. Like, we need to go to university and then later work for a big corporate to earn a lot of money, and there's no break between that. So I totally understand you're wanting to have a gap year, or it's like some time to travel and just to learn more about yourself, learn more about the world. But the path that we are taught to doesn't allow us to do that.
Yeah.
And a time for ourselves, it's something that we all need. And especially in that like quarter life, there's a transition here from being a kid of a family to a person who is totally independent, like financially and everything. And yes, we need that time to think about ourselves before moving forward, because if we do things too fast, it could be very dangerous about our health in the long term.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think your story just inspires people, and maybe if parents are listening to the episode, they have a new perspective of how they think about their child's career.
Yeah. And I understand too from the parents' perspective, because things were different for them in their age. And like, for my parents, going to university and getting a good job was the, apparently the smartest
first
decision that you could do.
Yeah.
And they did save a lot of money, and it's because they saved money that I was able to travel, because they could help me pay for my university. I didn't have a lot of student loans like some of my friends did. So I'm very grateful for that and for them. And I think I'm lucky too that my parents have always just wanted me to be happy and do whatever it is that makes me happy. But they also do want me to be smart about money and smart about safety and not putting myself in dangerous situations. So
I think that's all parents in all everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And because we live in different generations, I think that's how we think differently. But as you said, there was communication in the middle. You talk with your parents, you talk with your boss, so like authenticity, and you share your story. So both understand different needs and different thoughts of each other. So of course, there won't be like the perfect answer or the solution for both, but at least they're aware of each other's problem and thinkings.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you moved to Vietnam.
Yeah.
How was the first? Was it the first? Not the first trip to travel outside of your country, right? But how was traveling to Vietnam?
Yeah, it was the first trip to Asia.
Okay.
So everywhere else I'd been wasn't too big of a culture shock from America, but coming to Vietnam was definitely a huge culture shock. And
did you travel to another country in Asia first before coming to Vietnam, or Vietnam is also the first?
Yeah,
and
no, just like straight to Vietnam. Arrived at 1 a.m. got picked up from the airport, and I had signed up for a month-long like TESOL certification thing. So to get certified to teach English.
To teach English,
So it was an organized like group, and so someone from there picked me up from the airport, and they organized the housing and things like that. So I think that was a nice sort of transition rather than coming here and figuring it out
knowing
myself,
no one.
knowing no one. Like, oh my God, I couldn't imagine. But even still, I got here, I think 2 days earlier than the program started. So I was one of the first people to come, and I did not leave my room for 24 hours for like the first day. I was so scared. I was crying, and this was in GoVap. So GoVap was like the first sort of introduction to Vietnam, and like GoVap is very different from District 1. So I was so I was like, oh my God, like I
understand
all the traffic, like the motorbikes, and I literally did not understand how to get food. I just didn't eat for 24 hours because I like when you first come here, sometimes some of the restaurants, like a pho place, it kind of looks like it's just someone's living room. Like it looks like it's their house.
It doesn't look like a restaurant.
Right. It looks like their house that they just put some table and chairs outside, and you can like just sit down and have some soup. So I was really, really confused, and I was too embarrassed because I also didn't speak any Vietnamese, and I was too embarrassed to like go try and find anything. So I just sat in my room and cried. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it here for a whole year. So yeah, that was really terrible. But after people started coming to the program and the program started, and we had people to give us a tour, and they brought us to District 1 and gave a tour and did all the tourist stuff. And I was like, okay, like it is a big city. It kind of is like New York City. Okay, I can do this.
It's so interesting. I've never looked at Vietnam from that perspective. It's what I've lived with since I'm born here. But yes, it could be very, very, very different for a foreigner coming here. I used to study in Japan, but Japan is like a very developed country, and I had also the people who are like living there, Vietnamese living there, helping me, so there was no problem. But for you, that was totally a nightmare that I could never imagine. So, okay, tell me about what is the thing that you find most fascinating coming to Vietnam, even now or in the past.
Yeah, I think so. I teach adults, so I teach like university students or middle-aged adults, and so I prefer that a lot to teaching children, because with adults, like, you can have a real conversation and understand more about the culture. So what I think is fascinating is just hearing from people who are in their late 30s or older about the times living in Vietnam in their childhood, when, like, you know, during the war or after the war, and just hearing the resilience of the people and seeing how fast Vietnam has grown in just a few short years. You know, like, America has had 400 years to grow and develop as a country, and it seems like Vietnam just, like, snapped into a whole new developed country so quickly. And I guess just hearing those stories of how things used to be in such poverty and things like that just allows me to reflect on my life and understand how much privilege I had and still do have as an American, as an English speaker, as a white person, like all of these privileges that I wasn't fully aware of when I was just living in America. So, and I also really enjoy the emphasis on family and community here. That's quite different from American culture, which is very individualistic and just, you know, not so much about community, I think. And there's a lot of pride, like pride for your country here. I've noticed that when I talk to my students, they'll refer to Vietnam, they'll say, like, in my country, blah, blah, blah. So they say my country, whereas when I talk about America, I don't really think of it as something that is mine, or like I don't really identify with it so much. It's kind of just the place that I grew up, but I don't say, like, in my country, blah, blah, blah. I just say in America. So just these, like, little subtle differences that you can see.
That's got me very eye open as well, because as a Gen Z from Vietnam, I want to be, like, more westernized. Like, do you get what I mean? I want to listen to American pop music. I want to speak English. I want to become less Asian as I can. But when you come here, when you listen to, like, the stories of the, not old people, but, like, people who have lived in the wartime, and you say that's interesting for you, that make me feel like I need to know more about the history of my country as well, because that's the stories my parents and my neighbors told me when I was young as well, but I never pay attention to those because I took that for granted. Like, of course you were in poverty before, of course life was difficult before, but I'm grateful for that, but please don't always talk about those. We're living in a modern country now. Why are you talking about those nonsense? I used to think like that, and like, I didn't know how to appreciate and ask like older people to tell more about those stories to me, and for me that's very eye-opening as well.
Yeah, definitely ask about it, because we can never understand, like, the struggle that they went through, and like you said, just appreciating where they were and where they've come to now. And I think it would be really sad if Vietnam just became this totally westernized place. Like, I feel like I want to prevent that from happening. I'm like, no, like, keep your Eastern culture. It's so I don't know, it's just so different, and I think that needs to be preserved, because that would be so boring if the whole world just became the same and everyone had the same ideas.
So for you living in the middle, like you're from that Western kind of background, but you're living in Vietnam where everything is kind of people oriented, very people centered, community centered. Do you feel any difficulty, like keeping your own what's the word, your own personality. What's the word? Like integrity.
Yeah.
What's like keeping being you while
Yeah.
being in a different country? Did you ever feel that way?
No, I think because so many of my friends are either Vietnamese or like Viet Q, so they are from France or from America, but they're Vietnamese, and so they come here. And I think, yeah, it's difficult to answer.
But do you feel like sometimes you have to adapt yourself in some sort of ways to be in this culture? Do you feel yourself being here?
Yeah, I feel like I'm more myself here than at home because I feel like at home I have to pretend to be someone I'm not, because that's why I left in the first place, really, because I
Right.
couldn't really connect with the people around me because we just wanted such different things. Like the people at home, they were just interested in uh, climbing the ladder in their
Yeah.
careers and making more money and getting married and having a family and buying a house and things like that. And when I talked about, oh, I want to travel and learn things and do all these things, they're kind of like, what? Like, you can't just do that. Like, you have to be more realistic and those types of things. But then I come here and like Vietnam, I feel like, is just this place full of opportunity and this place where people believe in improving themselves and working really hard to achieve their dreams. I do think a lot of people are still stuck in that sort of, I just need to work hard and make more money. But I think a lot of that also comes from that poverty and wartime sort of
Yeah.
mindset. But the people that I meet and that I surround myself with here are all super into personal development and learning new things and traveling. So it makes me feel more at home
Home.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you find your own community of like-minded people in
Mm-hmm.
Saigon. And I have to admit that Saigon is a very open city compared to other parts of Vietnam.
Yeah.
So I guess Saigon is the word that you have to be if you're
Yes.
living in Vietnam to pursue what you are pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So like looking back 2.5 years living in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
I know that you've been through many difficulties. What is the most important or profound lesson that you've learned so far in this journey?
Yeah, I would say the biggest lesson I learned is that happiness is not found in another location. So, what I mean by that is when I was living in New York City and I was so miserable and like crying every day about my job and just hating everything, and I would go on Instagram and look at all these pictures of travelers like just living the best life, or so it seems on Instagram. And then I'm like, oh, all of my problems will be solved if I just like move somewhere else. And then I get here, and of course, at the beginning, things get better because I'm in a new place. It's exciting. I'm meeting new people, doing new things. But after a while, that kind of fades off, and then you're back to regular life and just going to work. And oh, now I hate my job again. And like living abroad is hard. And oh, like this, blah, blah, blah. So then you start to get down again, and then you start to feel like, oh, maybe I should go back home, and then you get in this pattern of as soon as you feel bad, you just want to
Yeah.
run away and go somewhere else and think that it'll get better, and like it solves the problem for a little while, but then you're back
Yeah.
to the same problem. And what I had to learn is that you have to you have to be happy inside. Like you have to be able to make yourself happy and not expect that another place or even another person is going to make you happy somehow. So you really have to look at your thoughts about everything and say to yourself, am I just having negative thoughts that I could change to more positive thoughts? Or, okay, this isn't the best situation. How can I make it a better situation? I, again, almost left Vietnam last August because I was just having a really down feeling again, like just feeling like I miss home and feeling like things are hard here. And then I was like, no, we're not doing this again. We're not running away again. Like you need to figure it out here. You need to figure out how to be happy here. And as soon as I made that change in my thinking, in my mindset, that's when I started meeting new people again, like starting my podcast again, doing all of these projects. And now I feel so good here and like actually so happy. Whereas if I would have just run away and gone home, I probably would be miserable again.
Right. I think life has many ups and downs, and of course, sometimes you are in the season of in a season of success, you feel very contented, happy, but there are seasons that you feel very down and depressed. And at that time, the thought that usually comes to us is, I will be happy if I achieve this. I'll be happy if I lose weight. If I'll be happy if I move to another country. If I afford this car, I afford this house. But those material possessions will ever get our happiness back. It's only our thoughts and how we transform our life from the within. And you've made that transformation within. Yes. Can you talk more in details of what kind of thoughts, negative thoughts you dealt with, and how did you get over them?
Yeah, so one of the things.
Is it too personal?
No, it's just funny, and I think it's something that like most expats will relate to, and probably most Vietnamese will just think it's really funny. But the thing about Saigon, especially for foreigner women, is that the dating scene here is terrible.
What do you use for dating?
It's so hard to date here. Like, it's so hard to find good men because, like, the foreigner men who come here are not the greatest kinds of people. It's like,
I see.
They basically, and I'm generalizing here, so obviously not all, but a lot of them come here just so they can, meet pretty young Vietnamese women, and the Vietnamese women like want to date them because they have money and they're white and like that kind of thing. So that's weird. And then, a lot of other people, they come here with their significant other, so they're not even
there's no hope
single.
on that.
That's not a thing. And then Vietnamese men like are so different from Western men, and there still seems to be old ideas about women, how like women should be cooking and cleaning and
I gotta get what you've been through.
So that's difficult. And to be fair, I haven't really even tried that hard. Like I don't even go on the dating apps. Like I don't even try to date, but it's just because I have this idea in my mind that it won't work anyways. And plus now with COVID, like A lot of
It's
people
like 10
went
times more
home.
difficult.
It's more difficult. And my younger sister got married in July.
Another pressure.
Yeah, all the pressure. And there is no pressure coming from my parents. They don't say things like, oh, when are you getting married or blah, blah, blah. Like, no one actually says that, but just the fact of seeing my younger sister get married, it just put the idea in my head of like, oh my God, I'm 28.
Need to find boyfriend now.
Yeah, like I'm not even dating anyone, and there's no one here, and I'm gonna be single forever. And just like started freaking out, and I was like, I have to go home to America and like find a husband and then bring him back to Vietnam. But after some thinking about that, I really sat down and was like, Dana, like, why do you think having a boyfriend will make you happier? Like, why is that thought even in your head? Is that really what you think, or is that what it seems other people think? And like, just, making the pros and cons list of going back to America versus staying here, like there was no reason really to go back to America for me. So it was like, okay, we're just gonna accept the fact that maybe you'll be single a little longer and just don't worry about it. Like, focus on myself, what I'm like, all the projects I'm working on, and it'll happen when it happens.
Podcast bạn đang nghe là một series nội dung trên kênh TU, nơi chúng ta sẽ nói về phát triển bản thân và cuộc sống sáng tạo. Hãy cùng TU thiết kế và làm chủ cuộc sống để chúng ta cùng nhau có một năm 2021 thật là ý nghĩa các bạn nhé. Bản thân mình thì đang sử dụng một cuốn sổ planner do chính mình thiết kế và sản xuất mang tên A Book of Tea 2021. Đây là nơi mình lên kế hoạch, theo dõi thói quen và thường xuyên nhìn nhận lại bản thân mình mỗi ngày. Với 240 trang in màu và rất nhiều những templates được thiết kế theo phương pháp Bullet Journal, mình tự tin rằng cuốn sổ này đang thực sự thay đổi cuộc sống của mình và rất nhiều những bạn trẻ khác. Hãy ghé qua Instagram shop.tu để xem thêm thông tin các bạn nhé. Giờ thì chúng ta hãy trở lại với nội dung của podcast ngày hôm nay.
I'm not a relationship expert, so I have no recommendation for you, but like the time when I found my significant other is when I focus very much on myself. So I would say that to you as well. Yes. But yes, from your story, you can see that we can all have very negative thoughts. Some of them can be very funny as well. But the first step of overcoming them is just to be aware of them. You don't have to neglect thinking about those funny thoughts or anything. You just have to be aware of them. This is, I'm thinking this. And later, as Dana have practice, you can sit down and think about the problem. Is it a real problem? Is it worth it to think about it? Is it anything that we can change about this? If not, we can just move on and think about new problems.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think the audience are very excited to know more about you. So I think they can listen to your podcast as well for more personal stories on how you came to Vietnam and the cultural differences, everything here. But now I want to ask you more about the personal creative project, which is the podcast. So is podcast the first project you started in Saigon, or as someone who is fighting a better life here, business here, or is it different?
No. So I did quite a few different projects that were kind of like little failures. It was kind of like start and fail and start something else and fail. So there were a lot of different things that I tried doing. One project was, I was like really interested in, again, like interested in relationships and especially cross-cultural relationships, meaning like, someone who is from Australia and comes here and dates someone who's Vietnamese, or someone who's German and dates someone from Thailand, like these couples who are from different backgrounds, who maybe speak different languages, and they have to communicate in their second language. I just found that so fascinating because it's like, how does that work? And so I was interviewing couples to ask them these questions, like, how did you meet? How did you know that you were into them? Like, what does love mean to you? How do you effectively communicate together? All of those things. And that was an interesting project. I never did anything with it. I like have the whole thing written up, and then I was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I'm not gonna start a blog, or I'm not gonna like post an article or something. So it's kind of just sitting on my computer waiting to be seen. But I really enjoyed that aspect of interviewing people and just getting to understand their thoughts and about their life. And I think the podcast idea really started coming from talking again to my students. They would say things like, oh, I wish I was confident like you, or I wish I had your courage to move abroad. And what I was thinking in my head is, first of all, I'm not more confident than them, because confidence is something that you learn from doing it over and over again. Like, I kind of see it like, if you want to improve your body, you have to go to the gym again and again and again. It's not like you can just go to the gym one time and then you have an amazing body. Like, you have to go again and again. And I think it's the same with courage and confidence. You have to try something and it doesn't work, and then you try again. And the more you do it, the more you gain. And then the other side is that, again, I recognize that privilege where I didn't have to spend my free time learning English, or like, my parents helped me a lot with paying for university, and they also don't put pressure on me to take care of them when they get older, or they don't put pressure on me to get married. So I don't have a lot of these things on my mind weighing me down like many other, especially Vietnamese women, do have.
Yeah.
So I kind of just wanted to show people examples of how other people are doing things that scare them, and maybe they are failing, but they're still trying something new and just going outside of their comfort zone. And maybe they don't have a lot of money to get the project started. So I interviewed some filmmakers who made a whole film just on their cell phone, because I just wanted to show people that you don't need to buy or have all the fancy video equipment. For my podcast, I just use my cell phone to record sound. Like, you don't need to have all the fancy microphones and all that stuff. Like, if you want to do something, if you have an idea, just try it and see what happens. And if it doesn't go well, like, try again if you want to. It's totally fine. And so that's really where the idea of Creators in Saigon came through, is just showing examples of people doing something that scares them.
Yeah, that's the exact spirit I want to communicate with my podcast as well.
Yeah.
Even though the audience is different and the topic would be different, but I want people to like get out of their comfort zone and just do things that they will never have to regret later not doing it. Yeah. So it doesn't have to make money. It doesn't have to pay your bills.
Yeah.
You just have to fulfill your passion, and you just have to feel it's worth it to do it at that time, and that's fine. and it's totally worth it for me as well. So I want to encourage younger people to try and live a life that they are won't regret in the future.
Yes.
Yeah. And so up until now, how many episodes have you done on your podcast of Creators in Saigon?
Yeah, I believe there are 24 now.
Wow. It's running for a while. So do you remember the first time you record a podcast? How does it feel like?
Oh my God, yeah. My first podcast, I did it with my best friend at the time, and we were just in her room, and I made us go under a blanket so that it would be more quiet, because I was so worried about
the sound really muffled.
Yeah, I was so worried about the sound and like having echo in the room. So we were under a blanket for an hour, like
very professional,
sweating.
I would never do that.
So professional, yeah. It was like sweating and so hot, and I was so nervous, and like when I started podcasting, I wanted to have in front of me like exactly all of the questions, and I wanted to know exactly how the podcast would go. But as I got more comfortable, I could just, listen more to what the person is saying and more naturally have a conversation. And also not worrying so much about the sound.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's also my practice as well here doing podcasts, just being mindful in the conversation and listen to all the guests wholeheartedly and just respond to what they're saying to get to know more deeply in the topic. Yeah. And what is the most difficult thing you've experienced doing a podcast?
Yeah, I think interviewing is really hard, and it is, again, like a skill that you get better at over time and that you are always learning constantly. So yeah, again, like I was saying, I used to over prepare and try to be so perfect and wanting the interview to go exactly as I saw it in my mind. And I was always worrying, like, oh, do I sound stupid? Like, is this a dumb question? Like, does anyone care about this? And realizing that this is not about me. It's about the guest, and trying to help them to tell their story. So that's when I started trying to listen more and have a deeper conversation, because if you try to plan it all before, you could be missing out on a much more interesting conversation if you would have just listened to what they were saying, and maybe you could hear some detail that you want to ask deeper about. But also, if you are too underprepared, then and you have like no main idea at all, and it's just like all over the place, that's also super hard for the listeners to follow. So it's trying to get that balance of having a good conversation.
Definitely. And this is also a skill that I can also use in my real life as well, doing normal conversations, as I think the way people usually do conversations are quite, not shallow, but like sometimes it's scattered all over the place. So being mindful as listening and asking follow-up questions will be the skills that are translated in my real life as well. So I'm glad that I'm building up these skills doing podcasts as well.
Yeah. A lot of times in normal conversations, we're not really listening to the other person. Like you said, we're just thinking about what am I going to say next, So
next, what else I can show off.
Yes.
I think the future of podcasts is pretty promising in Vietnam right now. I think more and more people listening to podcasts. Like the I don't know about you, but the behavior of a Vietnamese like someone like me now will be scrolling TikTok or podcast, not YouTube anymore.
Yeah.
So it would be either very, very short span attention content like TikTok, or very, very deep conversation like podcast.
Yeah.
So it's very varied like that. So I think the podcast has some room for development and growth in Vietnam. So
yeah, that's good to know, because
yeah,
I've been having trouble understanding the market here in Vietnam, and
right.
I can definitely tell more and more people are learning about podcasts. I remember,
it's still a new platform.
Even just last year when I would ask people, do you listen to podcasts? They didn't even know the word podcast. So
what is that? How do you use that?
Right. Like, what? I don't know what that is. So now it's like 50-50. Like, if I ask, half of the people will know what I'm talking about, and half of the people still don't know. But it's catching on. I think it's in the US, it's very popular because there's longer commute times. Like, you're commuting to work in your car or on the subway. So it's very easy to just listen. And I think here it's harder to listen while you're on your motorbike.
On the motorbikes.
Yeah. So
I can't imagine doing that on a motorbike. Might get accident immediately.
Right. So I guess people could still, while they're cooking or in the shower or doing something that you don't need a lot of focus, you can just listen to the podcast in the background. But yeah, it seems like people still prefer to just watch something interesting on YouTube. Yeah. So it's good to hear that it's growing, I think.
It's actually growing, I think. But because of the usual behavior, people will not go to either Spotify, SoundCloud, or Google Podcasts to listen, but they will listen on YouTube.
Yeah.
So if the show is on YouTube, I think it's better for them to reach the content in the way that they have already used to. Okay, so I think that's already enough for today's episode. Of course, I have more questions to ask you, but we still have a very small quick fire questions at the end. So I've moved to that section, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so with these questions, you can only answer in one sentence. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, for you, what is a creative lifestyle look like?
Ooh. I think it looks like, oh my gosh. I guess making space and time to do something that you love doing, that allows you to be thinking of your own ideas.
That's all right, because that's a quick fire question. You don't have time to think. Next question. What does your dream life look like?
I'm living it. It looks like right now.
I thought they need a boyfriend.
Oh yes,
cross-culture boyfriend.
Oh yeah,
to add to that.
That would be the one additional thing.
Yes.
So if anyone's listening, if you're single,
come ask.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What is one single habit that transformed your life?
Oh my gosh, so many. Going for a walk every morning is something that I do, and I try to get up at exactly the same time every morning and just go for a walk around my neighborhood.
Yeah, so to start your day with something like to nourish your mind.
Yeah.
Not to make it worse.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, last question. Oh, not last. Second last question. What is your most favorite book that you want to share with everyone?
Ooh. I'm not sure if they translated this book to Vietnamese, but it
could be in English.
Yeah. It's called How Not to Die. And yeah, maybe you've heard of it.
Yes, I've heard of it.
And it's basically just all about living a plant-based lifestyles.
Okay, last question will be, what is the most favorite quote that you live by?
I have it on a little note on my desk that I look at every day, and it just says be 1% better every day, or whatever it is, just like a little thing to improve.
Yeah, self-development sounds too broad, but when you put it as 1% a day, it's very feasible and very concrete.
And when
it's a number, and it's a compound effect of all of your habits every day.
Yeah, it all adds up. So at the end of the year, you're like so much better than you were at the beginning.
365% more better than last year.
Exactly.
Oh, it doesn't work that way. It's compound, so much more than that.
Much more, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that's the quick fire questions. Just wraps up the questions from me to you today. And I think from this episode, there's so many interesting stories that you have shared and inspired so many young audience listening. And thank you so much for sharing all that with us today. And for me, I wish you all the best in 2021, the second year of COVID-19 as well. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll meet soon if we have a chance.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me share all of this today.
Yeah, thank you for coming to the show. And one last thing. If someone wants to find you, where can they find you on social?
Yeah, on Instagram, my handle is at Dana, DANA .Drahos, DRAHOS, or on Facebook, same name. You can just search for me.
Okay, I'll put it on the show notes so everybody can click on it. Okay, once again, thank you, Dana, for coming to the show, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.